In 7th grade, I needed help with math, and every day after school I met with this girl who was tutoring me. One day, I went to the library where we normally met, but she wasn't there. I sat and waited for a good half an hour before I decided to walk down to the multi-purpose room to see if she was there. I know that she worked there sometimes too. She would help out an after-school band class or something, and they practice on the stage there. I didn't see a single student or faculty member on the way there, which I thought was odd. When I went inside, it was silent. The band wasn't there. Right next to the entrance door, there was a door that led to the stairs that led up to the stage. I opened that door and saw a pair of feet sticking out at the top of the stairs. Someone was laying down up there, I thought. But as I walked up, I had a sudden sickening gut feeling. The feet were twisted in a way that a healthy person just laying down would not do. I climbed the stairs, and when I got to the top, I saw something that no 12-year-old should ever see. It was a body. My tutor, my 13-year-old tutor. Blood was covering her face and her shirt. Her eyes were wide open. The expression left on her dead face, I still see it. Blood was all over the floor, and I felt as if I was actually dreaming for a second. It did not feel real. I turned and went down the stairs, on the verge of screaming at the top of my lungs. I finally ran into a teacher, and between hysterical sobs I told him what I found. The police covered the school 30 minutes later, and I was taken to the hospital for trauma therapy. The girl was stabbed 37 times in her chest, her stomach, and her throat.
I went to my dad's company barbecue when I was around 9 years old. It was at a small water park in town, and all I can remember was playing with all of the employees' children and conversing with my dad's coworker. His name was Chuck. Chuck was a ginger, had lots of freckles, a raspy voice, and a big beer gut. I thought he was kind of funny at the barbecue, but even at that young age, I felt uncomfortable around the guy. He would make inappropriate jokes and whisper them in my ear. I also remember him yelling at his miserable-looking wife and belittling her in front of my dad and his other worker buddies. That day after we left, I asked a lot of questions about Chuck, and I told my dad about the stupid, inappropriate things he whispered to me. He apologized for Chuck and called him right in front of me. My dad wasn't afraid of this idiot, and he called him a moron, told him to stop doing that kind of shit. I could hear Chuck's raspy voice on the other end, defending himself, saying things like, "Well, kids are just liars." After that day, I didn't really think about Chuck again, until one night about a year later. My dad got home from work really late. He had brought with him bags of Burger King when he came through the door. He was sweating. He seemed more stressed out than I'd ever seen him. As we sat down and began to unwrap and enjoy our Whoppers, he says he was being questioned by the police because Chuck had murdered his wife, cut up her body, put the parts in a 50-gallon plastic drum. It had been sitting on the side of his trailer for 2 months before the cops found it.
"6 years ago, I had a group of friends that always hung out together. My girlfriend at the time was also a part of this group. One day I get a phone call from the cops, and they tell me my girlfriend is at the police station because she found a body at our friend Jessica's house. She went over to Jessica's house to pick her up, and found her in a pool of blood in her bedroom. She was stabbed repeatedly by her boyfriend, who was also a part of our group. It was shocking, but over time, she got over seeing what she did, and we moved on. That is, until one day I picked up her phone while she was in her backyard gardening and started looking through her photos. I stumbled onto an unbelievably gruesome picture. She had taken a close-up picture of Jessica before the cops picked her up. Her face was mangled completely. I left her house immediately and took the phone to the cops. It was a crazy situation. I was told later that she also stole some of Jessica's jewelry. From that day on, I've had this disturbing feeling that she might have had something to do with Jessica's murder.
My neighbor was certainly an odd one. He was in his 70s, lived alone, did a lot of outside maintenance on his property, but rarely left it. He would wave and talk to me when he saw me walking my dog every day. He would talk about normal stuff, the weather or the news. But even still, he seemed off. He always seemed irritable, but who doesn't have an old neighbor that isn't? We invited him to Thanksgiving one year. He brought some foul-tasting stuffing, but then left 5 minutes later. One winter, he was just standing in the middle of the road in the snow. It was 3 a.m. He always kept his windows covered, his doors shut and enclosed tight. One day, he disappeared. Months later, my husband and I finally decided to break into his house and look around. And now I understand why he kept his windows covered. That house is the scariest, freakiest thing I have ever seen. He had been arrested for the murders of at least 4 women in our area.
When I was in 6th grade, I killed my friend Zach's mother. I was spending the night at his house. Zach was an only child, and his father was not in the picture. I was attracted to his mother. We were to sleep downstairs that night after watching movies. I waited for Zach to fall asleep and got up and went upstairs. His mother's bedroom was right at the top of the stairs, and it had double doors. They weren't locked. They weren't even shut. I pushed the door completely open and tiptoed into her bedroom. She was asleep. Her right leg was exposed, the rest of her body covered by blankets. I went to the side of her bed and looked at her. I wanted her so bad. I thought about climbing into bed with her and kissing her. I thought about touching her. I thought about stabbing her. I went back downstairs and laid back down on the couch. I laid there for a while, thinking about her, and then decided to get back up and get a knife from the kitchen. I was afraid to take the biggest knife, so I took a typical steak knife from the drawer and went back upstairs. I snuck up to her and climbed into her bed. I was so scared she would wake up. I slid the knife under a pillow and slowly leaned over her body to kiss her. She then woke up and became upset. She told me that I needed to leave her bedroom. I took the knife out from under the pillow and jabbed her in the neck with it. She fell backwards off the bed and began crying. I lunged out forward to her and jabbed her in the throat again, and then again. She wasn't crying anymore. Then I woke up. It was still dark, and my cellmate was still asleep.